Better? All right. Go ahead.
All right, well, welcome. So we loaded a tax release this past weekend, and this should probably take you almost up to Prism. We may have a few tweaks to make in Prism, and if there's any problems with this, and there probably might be a couple little ones, we'll be sending out another release like in the first couple weeks of February. But we should mainly be ready for tax statements, tax rolls, etc. So what was on this release was, we enlarged a few fields in our valuation notices, just gave, our counties a little more room to type, mainly their message information at the bottom. It was pretty short, and, I think it was only about 28 characters, so we enlarged that, and there's plenty of room down at the bottom to print it. So we enlarged that. As well, as long as we were doing that, we enlarged, lengthened the field, let me be clear, lengthened the field for the assessor information at the top. After that, and this is what you were waiting for, was there was a minor change to tax capacity calculation. This was not major, but it was causing a little bit of problem, and it's entirely possible that your county had none of these. But it had to be a very specific sequence to kick a carryover parcel off of ag credit. Well, actually, it happened on your county, or was it the carryover county? Susie?
It was, you were not home county, but you were supposed to be calculating ag credit and we weren't because of how it was set up.
Right. And it just happened when there was two in a row, two cross county in a row, and a field wasn't getting cleared out. So that's been corrected, so now everyone can do their final abstracts and get moving here. As well, last year we had a little bit of an issue with special assessments that were being paid up, but you weren't paying them up in this current tax year. You were paying them up like next year. And it appeared to be calculating fine. The special assessment calculation was right, but after that, things started going sideways, and it involved tax rolls, tax statements, tax totals, all the way up through update to treasurers. So once it got outside of the special assessment module, things did not work properly, and that has been fixed and corrected as well. And the last thing is our new assessment code for.
How it's working, Karen.
What? I think they meant to be muted.
Oh, okay. We added a new assessment code in Prism 2, the 430 personal property structure on leased land. And this is a 2-payment assessment code, so we added the programming to split that payment, that personal property code.
A little tidbit that we found when we were testing this is that very often, because this 430 is a state assessed code, it's combined with the 431. And the 431 is a single payment. So we're not gonna see very many of these 430s that will be the double payments. It's just the standalone ones. But there will be a few, and those now have been updated.
Yep. And that is it for this release. Like I said, unless there's corrections, and maybe I will have to totally review if there's any changes for Prism 3. I quickly read through it and it appeared to be okay. And also we are adding that you can input your own senior citizen deferral. That programming is already out there. I just have to update Prism to make sure it reads it properly.
So we'll be going through that when we go through the sequences here today.
Okay, and that's all I have.
Do we want to have conversations now or should we save that for the end?
It's totally up to you. I don't care.
Um, let's just hit it now, because we might get some
Okay.
people needing to leave. So, this you can process and give us feedback now or later or whatever. We came to MNCCC last spring, last May, June, and did like a short presentation on our report generator. It went well, and I
And the
think,
tax bill.
and the tax web, yeah, and some of the new things. It went well, and I think it was, appreciated. We plan to go back this year and are wondering if there are things that would be helpful for you. Would you like to see us do an auditor roundtable, or I guess we should ask the assessors, or an assessor roundtable? Would you like to see us, um, brainstorm in some other way, or go through some of the new things? If there's something that you suggest or that you would like, let us know. I think we have to tell them by like February here, what we plan to do, and we are kind of throwing around ideas. We will probably ask a little bit more formally for some of your feedback, but sometimes it can be helpful to brainstorm in person. So if anyone has a thought now, or we'll probably circle back and just ask this again at the end, please speak up. Any thoughts? Otherwise, the other thing we were asked to discuss now is this new law for judges and needing to remove all their information. We sent out the new updated, not sequence, but documentation for it. You're using basically the same steps you would use for safe at home parcels. You're just marking them as the not safe at home now in that option. The other question that came up was what to do with payments that were made on this parcel in previous years. If you were to go into a judge's parcel and you were to go to payable 2023 and see, you could maybe see that the judge paid this parcel in 2023. The reason we don't have this issue with safe at home is because you cannot make a parcel safe at home if um it was already owned. You can only make it safe at home when you purchase the parcel. Now they're trying to do the same thing with the judges, and it doesn't work quite as well to do it retroactively as to do it in real time. We're wondering what counties are doing about this, how big an issue they think it is, if they have requests. Right now, there's nothing you can do about those payments made in previous years. We don't have an option to be able to go change, that payer. That's not to say that we couldn't, but we're wanting to get feedback. What would you like to be able to see? What do you think is necessary based on what the state is telling you? Would this work better as an email that we sent out asking for responses?
Apparently nobody wants to talk, Susie.
Ferris, Bueller. Nobody wants to talk, so maybe we'll send an email out with these two things. To your office, and we do want maybe input from the assessors. I don't know how many of them go to the MNCCC, but we'd like input from them on that. And just see if there's any updates that we need to make or how much of an issue. This is not something that the public is going to see. This would only be, people in your office who are going back and looking at the previous year's payable statements. So you'd really have to be looking for it in order to find it.
Well,
So if you had a public login, like we have
yes.
Public 9 or something, and are we able to hard code that so that it doesn't, you can't use that F5 option to say yes to history or anything like that? How is that locked in for like public terminals in our office?
I was just thinking of that. Yeah.
you know, because that would be how
That would
somebody
be,
would see it. It's not on the web, but public terminals within our offices could, how would we deal with that? They
Yeah,
could see it, right?
yes. Can we lock that so that they can't see it? That might be an easier fix than,
so. Two things come to mind, and, one would be the taxpayer history. We'd have to make sure that isn't available. But the other thing is when you get to the receipt payments. Like, how do we know how far back we'd go? We just go back all the way and make that paid by the parcel number or something? And then as well, and this wouldn't be as big a deal, I mean, on there, you can technically print a receipt. That actually would, there probably is no printer attached, so it
mhm.
probably wouldn't work, but just disable that.
Mhm.
But the main question is, like, do you just go back forever if they're involved in this? Better safe than sorry, or,
To the point of when they took ownership, I would guess. Yeah, that
well, then that gets tricky.
that way.
Well, then, I mean, we just have to do forever. I mean, so if this parcel is involved in,
Yeah, and we can find that out, that's.
then you can't see the previous on a public screen.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that was my thoughts on that. What also happens to us then is like, you know, the my year-end list, I was thinking about all the reports we run. So that same perspective of the tax calculations report that I save on our network drive, I would need, nobody probably looks at it except me anyway, if I have to look at anything, but I would probably have to lock that down or redact any lines that come up from that.
Yeah,
Well, what
reports,
report is that?
reports that
Oh,
she's,
it's sort of,
Oh,
you're talking about reports that you already saved as like your year-end process. You no longer can share those with anybody without redacting lines.
Correct, right? Because if you end up having those parcels in there, it says who made payment or it defaults in the taxpayer of record name on those reports. And if they've owned it for the last 10 years, I'm going to have to go back to all 10 years of those reports that we're saving history on to redact that.
Right?
But that's outside of what you guys can do with it. It was probably more of a saying it out loud for the rest of us, or me particularly. I don't have any, but I'm knocking heavily on my wood desk.
this is pretty widespread, so I'm thinking
I think a lot of judges are gonna jump on this.
more so than Daniel's law.
Mm-hmm. Cause it's actually doing something for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and they're expanding it to other groups.
Right.
Um, you had a chat message, so special assessment reports and things like that, like what I saw come up, but
Mm-hmm. What about city special assessments? So any reports that you've run, you're gonna have to go back and redact information from, for anyone who has requested this.
I mean, going forward, as soon as you put it into your system with the parcel number and the name, like this year,
Mm-hmm.
we'll be fine if you send information to the city. But,
Because if you mark them as a protected official, then we remove their information from reports.
no.
on well, and then also wider than that,
Oh,
if the city is certifying that special assessment, they're
Yeah.
gonna have to probably use a different process that when they aren't gonna be able to, when they put together the list for approving unpaid utility bills or a road project, they're going to have to be, yeah, redacted like that to not have them part of the generic public record.
Right, so the safe at home and judicial official document. talks about, a few steps that you'd have to do. You're gonna have to go into taxpayer maintenance and not put their name in here. You're gonna put their parcel number as their name in here. So that's what's gonna go on the listings, is their parcel number. This is why the special assessment listing will no longer list their name, because you will not have their name in here. In valuation maintenance, you don't put their social security number into this screen, because it can be seen by too many people. You go into the safe at home subsystem and you add them, and you put their social security number in here, and then here's where you say, if it's a safe at home parcel, you say yes. And if it's a judge, you would say no, or someone under this new law, you would say no. And then you would go and you'd mark it as web excluded, so none of the data is going to the web, their name is no longer in your system. We've marked them, even in taxpayer maintenance, you probably want to mark them as a protected official. Which would be for like report generated reports, you can pull them out of there. So when you make a report generator for someone outside of your office, make sure you're marking yes to remove protected officials. So from here on, once they give you the paperwork, you mark everything in your system. You're not gonna be sharing their information. For reports you already ran, you're going to have to go redact those names.
Where'd it go?
Would you redact the name only so the city would know that the parcel was paid, right? So like it will still be on the list, it just won't be marked, right? Okay, that was helpful feedback. We will process that and maybe look for more as we move forward here. Anything else before we move on? I'm gonna have to do a couple of steps here. Okay, so we're gonna do just a little bit of review here. You can see in the meeting agenda that we sent out yesterday, the sequences that are in the gray box. We're just gonna talk about if you are looking for information where we walked through those, where you can find it. In spring of 2025, we did a Zoom where we walked through the omit abate tax statements, how you do ACH payments, escrow, tax settlement, and the financial interface, and confession of judgment. If you have questions about things, we recommend going back to that spring of 2025 session and looking at it. I can put a note here to add that link to the email we send out after this training. So we will upload a recording of this training and along with the documentation that we're going through, and give you a link to that. I will also give you a link to this training if you're looking for help walking through any of these. Also, the new delinquent year, the late notices, the auditor's year end, the new delinquent notices in the state general report. We have not walked through those. We don't plan on doing that today. Just so you know, that late notices, we made some updates to our late notices, and we will probably do a training on that later this spring. If there's anything else that you'd like to see done during that training, let us know. But that late notices is a new sequence. It's not a new option, but we did make some helpful updates to that option. It's a new sequence. We'll be sending it out prior to your May 25th date, so that you know the options for sending those late notices throughout the year. But if you have questions about these, just give us a call and we'll happily help walk you through them. Oh, I didn't realize there was more. I must have made this a while ago. So the new delinquent year setup, you know that, oh, that's why I wanted to talk about these. Make sure you've done these. The new delinquent year setup is when you go into your system file and you look for your penalties. You have a 2025 year. Hopefully you all have that now. The late notices, that's a service to taxpayers. It helps encourage payments. Counties that use that, they pay more in shipping, but they see way fewer confession of judgments, which cost the county time and energy. That auditor's year end sequence, that's where you're finishing out your pay 2025 and starting pay 2026. That needs to be done before your delinquent notices and listings and your state general tax report. Hopefully, we're all sitting at about that spot right now. This delinquent notices, these are the ones that start the foreclosure process. They're kind of tied to those court newspaper listings. You're not required to send our late notices. Those are in our treasurer's menu. You are required to send certain delinquent notices. Those are in our delinquent menu. So if you have a question about the difference between those, feel free to give us a call, but know that you do not want to ignore, if you're new to CPT, you do not want to ignore this delinquent notices sequence that went out. And then state general tax report, that's just an option that you run that generates info that you use to give that state general tax report that's due January 31st. So the other ones that we sent out back in fall 2025, we presented tax prep and calc 1A, 1B, and 1C. A lot of people start working on them in the fall. 1A you really wanted to work through before T&Ts, but you'll do it again here before spring taxes, just to make sure that if there's any changes to your power line parcels or your TIF districts, those are updated before your assessor's final abstract, because we pull that information into the assessor's final abstract and you use it for your levies. Tax prep and calc 2 was just sent out. This you do after your final abstract. Typically end of January, early February, we're starting that. A lot of the steps in tax prep and calc 2 are the same as the steps in the T&T sequence. In fact, I think next year I will update that T&T sequence. So we'll send out tax prep and calc 2 in the fall, and the T&T sequence will be the things you do for T&Ts after it. And you'll run tax prep and calc 2 again in the winter, and you'll move on to these steps here at the bottom, 1 through 8. So you want to run that, and then tax prep and calc 1B and C, which are like ditches, solid waste, special assessments. Those you want to have finished before you jump into tax prep and calc 3, where we're starting to put together our tax statements. So if you want help looking at tax prep and calc 1A, B, and C, we covered those thoroughly in the fall. I'm going to run through tax prep and calc 2 now, but we covered that thoroughly in the fall, and you'll see me referencing a lot of things like watch the fall training if you want more information here. These 1 through 8, we're going to go through for you in more detail here today. You have 1 through 3 right now. You can be working on those. We'll send out 4 through 8 once we have uploaded the release that gets you ready for Prism. And then you'll be able to move forward on those. There was a document sent out with the first 3 steps. And these ones you'll notice on the front of the sequences, they're labeled step 1, step 2, step 3. It's a little confusing because step 1 is actually tax prep and calc 3. So there's a lot of numbers involved, but these ones are the numbered sequences because we did kind of like mix up the order that you did things in last year. So if you go through them in order, that should help you.
And we think that worked well.
I think it worked well. We had way fewer like post-prison issues than we had in the past. Fewer counties scrambling because there was issues.
Rate issues.
Like significant, you need to pull back your tax statements and make changes issues. If anyone has feedback on that, we are open to it, but we're doing it the same way this year because the feedback we got last year was this was so much cleaner and we rest so much easier sending out tax statements knowing that our Prism has been accepted and totally worth doing. Okay, so tax prep and calc 2. This now includes the ag credit stuff. So we sent out a auditor cross-county sequence, which is basically your ag credit that you were supposed to use in conjunction with your T&Ts. Though there's 2 steps basically in that sequence that you'll see have been incorporated into tax prep and calc 2, so you don't have to worry about that auditor's cross-county sequence with your ag credit steps. This spring, it'll just be part of this tax prep and calc 2. So before you do tax prep and calc 2, you want to finish 1A, which is your power line and your TIF districts. Then you want to have your assessor do their final TC calc and abstract accumulation, because we pull all of that into your rates files when we're inputting rates. Step 1, you can do anytime. You can do before or after. You can do anytime you're getting new rates. It's likely not necessary now because you're gonna use the same rates you did at TNT's. But if you added something that you need to add, you're gonna wanna add that description. Step 2 is gonna be clearing out your rates. You still do want to go in and clear out your rates. We suggest you list the rates you had for TNT's and then clear out your rates files. Those rates you had for TNT's can be so helpful when you're proofing and you're looking for something and what's missing. It's a really easy way to catch like your type 11s or you forgot to input your type 10 state rates, things like that. You just see them missing in the listing. But you do want to clear out your rates file because we pull values from the most recent assessor abstract, both tax capacities and referendum market value, and we pull the power line and tax increment subtractions. So if anything has changed, the changes will pull in. Keep in mind that you have to manually add any rural service districts or values for neighboring counties as you move through. Step 3 is to go in and type inputting your rates. Now, every year we have a county that moves forward when their screen looks like this. Because their assessor says, oh no, I calculated and accumulated. I calculated and accumulated. So they move forward. What I'm going to tell you is if your screen looks like this, our system is pulling the data from 10, 16, and 25. So whether they accumulated or not, you're going to need them to reaccumulate until this says the date that you want it to say, because this is the date that our system is using. So before you go in here and you start actually inputting your rates, make sure the accumulation is right. If it's not, you need them to reaccumulate, and then you need to go back to step 2 and clear out your rates again, because that clearing is what pulls the new data in. If you have this issue, talk to us and we will help make sure that you're using what you want to be using. Step 3 is going to be the same as TNT rates. You can see details that were submitted about this in September. Change TNT sequence. Oh, this is where I was going to say, I'm going to change the TNT sequence. I already told you that. This is going to be included because it's the same. Then you want to go into option 11, list your rates and take your initial rates and compare them to TNT's, compare them back to your totals. Then you want to calculate, accumulate, and list your tax totals, compare those totals back. Do really good proofing to make sure everything is in there the way you want and your totals are pulling the way that you want. Once they are, you can share your rates with neighboring counties. And like I say, a lot of these details were in September, but you're going to go in here and you're going to pull your rates and your rates. I'm assuming most of you do that from the listing, but those are what you pull. This is how you put in when your neighboring counties send you rates. If you are not the home county, then you're not inputting the levy. You're typically inputting the rate that they sent you. So you would input rates and rates. Step 6 is to proof. And again, you can list them off, proof, make sure the rates look like they're supposed to. If they gave you totals, you can list your tax totals again and see if the totals are what they're supposed to be. You just want to proof really well before you input your disparity reduction aid, because once you input your disparity reduction aid, it becomes really difficult to proof because it kind of spreads out all over. You also want to make sure all of your rates are inputted before you go in and maintain your disparity reduction aid, because the system will not let your rate go below 90%. And so we'll use as much aid as we can until that rate gets too low. So if you don't have all your rates in, we might be not using aid. And then when you add a rate, we could have used more of that aid, but it's not going to apply it unless you go back in. So you really want to just make sure you have all of those initial rates in, proofed well, you feel really good about them before you input your disparity reduction aid. Once you do input that, you can go back into your tax capacity rate listing and take option 2. Disparity reduction aid shows in this middle column. It'll be empty for most of it. And then you can view here the amount that was used, not the amount that you inputted, but the amount that was used. If you're looking for it in your tax totals, you want to list the detailed district option. I actually think the school option prints it as well, but a lot of people go in and they do the township or the county total, and it's not going to be in there. You're going to have to do the detailed taxing district or the school option to see the disparity that was applied. Once you're done with all of that, you wanna do a final tax calc. And when you do your final tax calc, we suggest doing a reorganization of special assessments. That's going to give you a listing that you'll wanna check. When you say yes to reorg of special assessments, it's going to pull out any special assessments that are removed because they have nothing due. Maybe the parcel was removed since they were input in there. Maybe they were paid up. Maybe for some other reason, they weren't removed before now, but they were removed now. You want to check those to make sure that's correct and something didn't accidentally happen and then now these are being removed and they're supposed to be on there. The other thing that we'll list is the cross-county parcels with unused ag credit. These are the parcels that you're gonna wanna share values with neighboring counties, which is the next step. And then ag credit parcels with zero tax. We went into that in September, but the zero tax listing is often fine. So for instance, for this parcel, I pulled it up in A-tax, auditor's tax inquiry, and you can see that the tax was $521.36. The ag credit was $478.17. So what happened to that $43.19? Well, that was a school bond credit. So it's okay that there's no tax. You probably want to proof a few of those. Make sure you feel comfortable with that listing. It used to be short. Now with the school bond, it's pretty long, but just a heads up. So those were the listings that come up when you calculate tax. When you take option 6 and you accumulate, you'll get this tax capacity comparison listing. If I was you, every time I accumulated, I would check it, because if your assessor accidentally changes an MP number or a choice code then you get something that changes their tax capacity and you have a line on here. If you have a line on here, your totals are going to change. Your tax totals are going to change. You want this to be empty. If it's not, give us a call and figure out what you need to do. And then for that list tax totals, when you know that this is your last listing, you're going to want to list and save it. Although once you've imported your disparity reduction aid, it's tough to proof it. So once you've inputted your disparity reduction aid and you've done your calculate, accumulate, list, and everything looks good, then you're ready to share carryover credits with your neighboring counties. This is like your excess ag credit. So if you go into tax M22 and take option 13, 2 is going to be the listing that you would share. So if you run 2, it'll give you a page for every county that you have calculated ag credit for. And if there's any excess, which means any that was not used in your county, you need to make sure you get that number over to that county and they'll input it. Hopefully they do the same for you. And then when they send you their amount, you go into this carryover credit option and you input the excess ag credits. Keep in mind that we do use decimals in here. You're probably not going to have many, but you are generating carryover credits for the parcels where you are the home county. Those would be your home county yes parcels. And you are inputting carryover credits for parcels where you are not the home county. That would be cross county no parcels. So those are the ones that are listed in this option 3. We always want you to go in here and look at this because you have to get rid of any that were here last year. You don't want to be giving people ag credits that they don't deserve this year. So make sure you always go in and at least look at this screen and clear out the old and then input the new. That's the end of sort of the summary portion of today. The part that we're doing the same for T&Ts as for tax. Most of that you already did last fall. These upcoming steps change. So going into tax prep and calc 3A. Before you do this, make sure your payable year is 2026. If you ran your auditor's year end, your payable will be 2026. Make darn sure that it is. Also take a look at these due dates. These are the dates that are going to list on your tax stubs. So these are the dates that the taxes are due in 2026. Once you feel good about that, you can go in and do final calculations. Now, if you are doing this shortly after tax prep and calc 2, fine, you already did these. But if you inputted excess ag credits after you did kind of your final, you're gonna have to do another final. And it's up to you how far back you go, but you wanna make sure you're calculating, accumulating, and listing. after you have inputted everything that you've needed to input for your county. Once you do that, you wanna go in and assign receipt numbers. The reason we don't do this until now is because you have to do it every time you reaccumulate. Every time you reaccumulate, you have to reassign receipt numbers. So you're gonna wanna go in and take this option 4 for real and personal. For option 2, if you say, the question is, do you want to assign receipt numbers to parcels that have 0 gross tax? If you say no, then parcels with specials but no tax will not be given a receipt number. You can still input them with the parcel number, but they won't get a receipt number. If you say yes, all parcels will be given receipt numbers, even those who have nothing to, no specials, no tax. There's not a right and wrong, it's up to you, whichever you like to do. Question 3, do you want to assign receipt numbers alphabetically? Anytime you see this, would you like to list alphabetically, assign alphabetically? If you say no, we're going to go to parcel order. Parcel orders are default. If you say yes, then we're gonna go in taxpayer order. Taxpayer order is the alphabetical option. And then for real estate, we suggest starting with the street number 1. Option 8 is setting delinquent parcel flags. This is done automatically every night. Option 1 in here, mass setting of delinquent flags. I'm gonna change this. That's the opposite of what it is on the slide. Step 4. This top one, maintaining, or the bottom one, mass setting of delinquent flags, that's done automatically overnight. That's saying, yes, there's delinquent, no, there's not. If it's flagged as delinquent, then they're not eligible for the QTA, for the property tax credit. Okay.
Oh.
Homestead credit.
Refund.
Property tax refund, PTR, there it is. If it says that they're delinquent, they're not eligible for a PTR. If there's no delinquent, then they are eligible for PTR. If you had somebody who came in, they were delinquent, they paid today, they said, could you please make sure that I'm not? You can either do a mass set right now after you apply that, or if you're not gonna apply it today, you can go into option 1 and say, we're gonna mark you as not delinquent. We're gonna remove that delinquent, but realize that will reset overnight because we'll do a mass set overnight. So that has to be done the day that you list your tax statements in order for it to go through correctly. Then once we get to tax rolls, tax statements, Prism, this is where you would stop name address changes. Because that's, otherwise it's gonna look like you sent it to one person and you actually sent the tax statement to another person. So you're gonna pause your name changes, list your tax rolls. We suggest you list by detail, at least to just check to make sure there's receipt numbers on there. Otherwise, we often list our tax rolls and we proof them back to our tax statements. So if you go on and you do township totals and you do, not tax statements, tax totals, and you list your tax totals as a county total, the totals should match. So here's your tax rolls and here's your tax totals, and the total credits, the total special assessments and the total tax due should match up. If they don't, give us a holler. Every once in a while, there's something odd here. This is how we found the special assessment issue last year. It was in one, but it wasn't in the other, and it wasn't in either of them perfectly, and we were able to fix it for the counties who actually did this proofing. We were able to fix it right at the beginning. Even though we quote, never find anything, we still suggest doing the proofing so that, you know, that 1 year in 50, that there's something there and you catch it. After that, you can list your tax statements and start proofing them. We strongly suggest you do not send out your tax statements until you get your Prism approved. But you can list them, send them to your outsourcers, start proofing them. If you're printing locally, let Sue know you'd like to get on her calendar to start proofing them, but you are not going to be sending these until your Prism has been approved. Keep in mind that Prism opens their Prism 3 on March 1st. So even if you get this done on February 14th, you're still gonna be waiting for Prism to be ready to take your file and get that approved by her. We'll say this later, but I don't think we can say it enough, because every year we have a county. Even if you print locally or do something, For all of your tax types, you want to run an outsource file because we use outsource files to populate your L statements and your web files. So for real estate, for mobile home, for transmission, for mineral interest, for wind and solar, you want to run those outsource files, even if you're not outsourcing, because it populates the L statements and preps the files we send to the web. That's tax prep and calc 3A, which is your real estate. We send real estate and transmission distribution lines to Prism. So after you're done with 3A, you need to go in and run transmission distribution lines A, which is pretty straightforward. Step 1 is basically information only. It's how you would maintain the parcels. These are state assessed parcels, so you're only, if you were adding them, you'd be adding them last summer. When the state made a new parcel, the state would have told you, you would have made them then. Same thing for step 2. You want to make sure that your assessor went into, this is a new step for them this year. We had you guys do this last year and it was really frustrating for most people involved. So they just have to go into, after they create their final abstract, they do their final TC calc, they have to go into and out of this valuation maintenance option, which many of you don't have access to, and it will just calculate tax capacities for the transmission lines. So that step 2 is more of a check in with your auditor and your assessor and make sure they're doing it. Oh, here's a really old question. No, not really old. Will there be a sequence on the judicial address thing at some point? The sequence that I showed you was already sent out. We will send that to you. I will make sure it's on our web. Whenever we send out sequences, there's a link at the bottom to like all the auditor sequences that we sent out recently.
Changed that list since we originally printed it. Okay. But if you paid, everything's paid up, you don't have to worry about it. We don't cross off anything. So February 15th, we're gonna just rerun the list.
We're just gonna help Daryl out. Okay, so, I will send the, judicial to you, and then we'll make sure that that's online, but yeah, that was sent out with the update at the, like, on January 2nd or whenever we sent that out. We'll make sure everybody has that. Okay. Back to transmission lines. Okay. So valuation maintenance, you just need to make sure your assessors went in there. Step 3, this is the first step that you really do. Once the tax capacities have been calculated, you take option 3, and option 3 just opens the screen. By opening the screen, we pull your current tax capacities into here and we calculate these average rates, because these are the parcels that are taxed at a county-wide rate instead of an individual rate. So when you open this, we look at the rates you used for real estate. That's why you have to be done with those rates. And we come in here and we calculate your county-wide rate. Just going in, hit enter, F3 back out. That does the calculations that are required for this step. Then you're going to calculate your tax values. That's step 4. Then you're going to accumulate your tax totals. That's step 5. We don't really proof your tax totals because this is like gravy money. You don't know what they're supposed to be. So we suggest you go step forward and assign receipt numbers. It's going to be the same as your real estate, except it's going to auto load 6 because you're in transmission lines. We recommend starting at 60001, and then these options 2 and 3, those are the same options as the real estate was. Once you assign receipt numbers, you can list your tax totals, list your tax rolls, make sure you've got receipt numbers on there. You can proof back and forth to make sure the totals match each other, but you don't have any levies to proof back to, because this is just based on your, like it's additional. It's based on your countywide rate. So at this point, you are ready to submit your Prism 3. Once you finish these 2 and we send out the Prism sequence, you're ready to proof and submit your Prism 3. We suggest waiting on the transmission distribution statements because they need to be approved through Prism. And there's typically not that many of them for you. our auditor's abstract is the next sequence I'm gonna go through, and we use the abstract to proof for Prism. So, in order for the abstract to populate correctly, you need to have inputted the abstract numbers when you were doing your initial rates. So when we took option 11, we listed our rates, the abstract numbers are here. Those correspond, if you look at the abstract reference document, we sent 2 step 3s. One is the abstract reference sequence, one is the abstract reference document, or the auditor's abstract sequence, auditor's abstract reference. This is going to tell you what levies get which abstract numbers. And if you have questions on that, you can certainly call us or ask a neighbor. Because anytime you add a new rate, you need to figure out where it should go in your abstract and make sure those are filled in. Assuming those are filled in, then you can go into tax M22 option 20. All of your auditor's abstract options are going to be inside option 20. You take one first, which is going to set up and proof and list all your data. First, it walks you through your special districts, and any that are set up with the state, you should have a blue description and a state code for it. Any that are not set up with the state and they don't have state codes, they're just gonna be blank. So any new ones that you added since last year, that they should list over here, but you will have to put in this blue information. Once you get through those special districts, then you're gonna get to detailed taxing districts. And you wanna F5 through each of these at least once. You can come back and you can add and change things if you want to. But when you go through these, it does kind of pull data that we submit to Prism. So you wanna work through them at least once. It kind of explains in the sequence, these down here are for adjustments that were made. Some counties use them, some counties don't. If you use them, that data does get pulled into your Prism. If you don't, there's just no data that gets pulled into Prism. There's a lot of instructions for that in the sequence. Feel free to call us with questions. When you get to the last page, it's our county record. We're pulling info from transmission distribution lines. If this looks wrong, you can field exit through all of these fields, hit enter, and it will pull in the data. This data is sometimes slightly off from your transmission distribution because of rounding. Because for your transmission distribution, we're calculating by individual parcel, and this is calculating in total, but it's usually pretty close. This senior citizen deferral amount down here, this is the new piece. Typically, you would have prepped your abstract, done everything. Once you're ready for Prism, you call and say, please put the senior citizen deferral amount in. You're not doing that anymore. You are going to, when you are done with all this and you're setting up your abstract, you're going to put your senior citizen deferral amount. This is the amount that the state pays total. So the state tells you this person has to pay $585 on your taxes. You know they owe $586. You're going to put $1 here. That's the amount state pays. This is going to pull into your Prism file. That's the way we've been submitting it before, is just adding them all together and giving the state the total. Now you just put it here, and then when you accumulate Prism, we will pull that into Prism.
This is so exciting.
You now have the power.
Okay, I'll holler at you when they get to that. They're still on Prism. You know how exciting Prism is.
We'll just help her out. Okay. So options 2 and 3 are going to be building and printing your abstract file. Building it is going to pull that information you did from option 1, and then printing is going to be listing it. You can proof your abstract as much or as little as you want. We recommend saving a copy for future reference because it can be really helpful to be able to reference what you submitted in Prism. But keep in mind that for the most part, we're sending parcel detail, not necessarily the totals that come out on your abstract to the state. We still do have that TIF abstract there. It used to be sent to the state. Now we really don't pull anything from that TIF abstract to the state. The TIF information we pull from your auditor's abstract, but it can certainly be helpful to check. So if you make sure all the data for your TIF districts is put into your system file, And then this, option 15 is a really helpful TIF listing. So it will show you the amount that you can expect that tax increment to pull in, this year. And if there's excess, it'll show you the excess. There's two ways to get excess. This would be the excess from tax calculation. There's another way to get excess that they would pay back to you. We don't calculate that, they do. So that option 15 is really helpful. Otherwise, option 20 here is the tax increment abstract. And you would go in and build it and then lift it. Again, this is really information only. It's not gonna pull into Prism. It's just gonna be, information from parcels and then from the auditor's abstract that pulls into Prism. So if you look at your TIF, this is from the TIF tax listing, so this increment district is pulling in $10,617, while on your TIF abstract, lines 300 through 350 are showing it's pulling in $617, and in your auditor's abstract, lines 200 and the 290 are showing here is pulling in that 1016. So those should all connect for those of you that are looking for how all of that connects. After that, we will submit Prism 3. The tidbit that we need to tell you about Prism 3 is not to submit it till we send you the document. Once we email you the document, that means we have loaded the update that will allow you to compile your Prism. It can take several hours to compile Prism 3. It has the most information we send to the state. You can run it on one screen while other people start to continue to use the system, or you continue to work on another screen. Just be real thoughtful to like run it on the screen. You can see, every year we get people, I've closed it down and I don't know what's happening now. And we have to watch it. So try to run it on the screen you can see, but you don't have to stop your life while it spends several hours running. You can just let it run in the background. Once it's run, check your error log in your tax bill folder. Make sure that that's empty. And then you're going to want to copy it onto your computer, zip it, and submit it to the Prism room. Here's the other thing. When you submit it, you will submit it. The Prism room will say validating, and then you'll continue to like update that screen until it says complete. That means your upload is complete. It doesn't mean you're done with Prism. 24 hours later, they'll tell you whether they reject or accept your Prism. If they reject it, you want to go looking for the actions that they're asking for. There will be actions on their website. If they accept it, you can continue on with the sequences. You're good to go. I think you also have to submit extra documentation to them, but nothing extra for us. So that's the thing. Again, every year we get people who think that they're done and then they're like, oh, actually it was rejected. What do I do now? We have to go back and look for the actions. That's it for me. Someone else want to take a look at the computer? Now we're getting to the exciting stuff.
Yes, the very exciting.
None of this abstract nonsense.
This is the exciting part. You got your Prism accepted.
Oh.
So this sequence should only be done when final Prism acceptance from the DOR is done. So once you get that final, yes, it's all good to go, then you'll be able to finish tax statements, update to treasurers, and run your total settlement. If you have any issues with Prism, please reach out to CPT to make sure all of your steps are covered before you go ahead and move on to printing your tax statements. Once you get that acceptance, we could move on to printing either in-house or to your outsourcer. An outsourcer file was created, Susie talked about that, was created in part A, and this is used to generate the PDFs for the web and your L statements. And then when you are ready for that, contact us and we can get your info on the web. Before you do this, we need to back up all of your tax files. Make sure everybody is out of the system before you take this step. It's in the data processing area, and I'm not always sure everybody has access to that all the time. Right, only certain people, but yeah, you'll want to go into the data processing and do your backup files. Do you wish to save your tax files online? Click yes. And then you're going to update to treasurers. Again, you don't want anybody in the tax system when you're doing this. This is also in the data processing and the year-end processing option, and you are going to update your tax values to the treasurer's receipt files. Then you are going to rebuild your index files. This is optional because this does run every night, but if you would like, you can. And again, make sure everybody is out of the system. It's in the data processing, end of day processing, and you will rebuild your index files. You also want to check your penalty tax parameter dates that you did back in January, which is January now, but later you'll want to go back and check what you did in January. Check those dates to make sure that everything is where you want it to be, so those penalties get calculated right when you start receiving payments. You also want to check the payment cutoff date for publishing costs. Make sure that that date is correct. Don't use 2025, try to use 2026. And the other options below will carry over from whatever you did last year. So basically it's just that date for your publishing costs. Then we are going to calc total settlement. And that is in the auditor's menu, option number 3, and calc total settlement. Then once you calc your total settlement, then you're gonna wanna list that settlement out, which is option 13. You can list total settlement by any of these options, whatever is easier for you to compare. If you want a big report or if you wanna break it down in small ones, this is where you choose your options. Then you wanna proof your total settlement back to your total taxes. And if everything looks correct, you can start listing or posting your receipts, abatements, and additions for the 2026 taxes, which is an exciting day. Other options, you can list your tax settlement, tax capacity rates, and that option is also in the total settlement option number 13. And then you can also prove this back to your 2026 tax capacity rates. And then we are going to want to do transmission lines and distribution tax. Also, so you're going to want to generate those tax statements. Transmission lines is in its own subsystem. By running this list tax statements, it's also going to create your L statements and build that file that will get sent to the web. We recommend that you generate and print the tax statements, so you have those in your outsource file. When you print, just here. Do your print, put your L statement on the any command line and type 26 for the tax year, and then input the transmission line parcels and hit enter. So those will pop up for you to print or to save, since you probably don't have a ton of transmission lines taxes. And then you're going to pause here. Do not update transmission lines until you have updated your real estate first. And then you are going to update your transmission lines to treasurers after you've done real estate. You can update, same thing, you're gonna update your tax values to your treasurer's files, and then you're gonna calc total settlement. You can list out your totals tax, your total settlement, and compare those two if you would like. And then you will also be able to post receipts and abatements for your transmission lines. And I'm done.
Okay, if you have mineral interest parcels in your county, you will want to do this sequence next. All of the mineral interest parcels are inputted in the subsystem of the auditor's menu, option 11. And then from there, mineral interest is number 5. You first want to maintain and list all of your descriptions, 1 and 11 there. So step 2, you wanna list and maintain your parcel values. In option 2 is your maintenance screen. From there, take a 12 to list your parcel values. Assessment code 499 is for mineral interest parcels. And the mineral interest tax is based on acreage, so that's, you will enter your acres there rather than a value or a tax capacity. The next step is to calculate the tax values based on the cents per acre. And if you have, it's a minimum of 320 is the tax that can generate. And if you round up your answer yes to round up acres, you'll get to the next whole acre if you've got kind of an odd number there. Next up, calculate or list and, oh my goodness, accumulate and list your tax totals. Options 6 and 16, which is probably starting to look like a pattern. All the things. Run both of these to verify the values on your listing. Your total taxes should equal the acres multiplied by the rate. Pretty explanatory. Want to assign your receipt numbers, option 7. We suggest starting with number 50001 for your mineral interest parcels. The next step, option 17, you'll list your tax rolls. Here you'll verify your listing back to your tax totals and then confirm that you've generated receipt numbers on the tax rolls. And then you generate the tax statements in option 20 in the treasurer's menu. Hop over to number 3 to list your tax statements. This will generate your L statements and build the file that sends the statements to the web, one web. And you want to spot check a few of your statements here. So this is very similar to step before with transmission lines and all. Okay, and then same idea here. You want to create an outsourced file to get those statements to the web. So you'll always choose 3 and number 1 for all parcel numbers in option 8. Last step is to print your, not the last step, the next step is to print your tax statement. Just type L statement on any command line, type in 26 for the year. Input your mineral interest parcels if you have them, press enter. They'll pop up and this could take a few seconds, few minutes to appear. Once that's done, pause again and do not update your mineral interest parcels to the treasurers until you have first updated real estate to the treasurers. And same again as all of the other options, make sure everyone is out of the tax system and the subsystems. You want to update your tax values to the treasurer's file. Updating or running this option will move the values to the treasurer's file, which allows the receiving, posting, and settlements. And option 9, you'll calculate your settlement, and option 19, list your total settlement for the mineral interest parcels, and that's it for mineral interest.
Last parcel type. Not everyone has all, but I think most of our counties have all of them.
And mineral interest too.
Not very many, but.
Wind tower and solar power, after you say that a few times, it's tongue twister. And again, I think everybody's mentioned this, but these subsystem tax statements, the real estate has to be updated to the treasurer's file first. This is no different with the wind tower and the solar power. This menu option is within the miscellaneous subsystems in the auditor's menu. And it'll be a special menu called the WDT 020. This needs to be done in these menu options, not in menu tax M21. Once you get in here,
It is important to answer this question. The wind tower tax file must be rebuilt. All maintenance is lost. Answer yes to this. So you have a fresh new set of files for 2026. And once you are in here, you'll want to press F11 to enter the information you want to print on your energy statements. And then here's an example of what it looks like, and then enter your county information, etc. And then once you do that, then you can work on the parcel maintenance, noting assessment code 590 is for wind towers, 591 is for solar power. And once you do that, you can enter in your parcel number, and you can enter in the information needed. Keep in mind, there is a Minnesota state statute. The energy production rate is $1.20 per megawatt hour. You'll be getting that information provided by the state, so you can input it in here. Once you do that, you can list your tax rolls and proof your information. And this is just an example of something very fictitious here. I created a $120 statement. The next option is listing your tax statements. And the message, do you wish to reset the tax statement totals? Answer yes to this question. And when you're putting in your criteria, and again, this was mentioned before, always choose the outsourcer because you're gonna use it later on for your L statements, etc. And you'll want to print all parcels within the wind tower and solar power. So select all. Once you do this option, that outsource file will be found in your tax bill folder under TX, ST, MTWT, and the PDF statements will also be in the tax folder within the media folder under WTE 2026. And here's an example of the energy statement. Notice it does look a little bit different than the traditional tax statements. And then pause here, of course. You can't update this either until the real estate parcels are updated to the treasurer's files first. It's very important. Once you update to the treasurer's files, those real estate, then you can come back and then you can do your wind tower and solar power as well, as well as doing your, your other ones that you can't do until the real estate is done. Once that is done, you'll want to calculate your total settlement and then list your total settlement. This has to be done before you can do any of your postings, abatements, or additions. If it's not done, there won't be anything to compare it to. And then other available options within the wind tower and solar power. On the auditor's side, you can post and list your abatements and additions and omitted statements. There's also a delinquent menu. And then within the treasurer's wind tower, solar power, that's where you're gonna be posting your tax receipts and listing your receipt journal. And that's it. So it was kind of fun doing the wind towers. I haven't, on my test files, I have to admit, I don't have wind towers in my test county, so I can quickly make one up so I could do this, but it is a really quick process, so.
It's really slick.
It was really slick, yeah.
That's all we have for you folks today, unless anyone has any suggestions or questions from earlier. If not, we will get this uploaded and get you documentation probably sometime tomorrow from today, and we will let you know when we're ready to move on from the stuff that we have. Otherwise, that's it. Have a good day.